I did not have to go to the hospital with it.
Okay.
I got sick and I was sick for about 10 days, but I go to the hospital. I recovered and I just recently had my second vaccine. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I had just a little bit of trouble with my second dose. I got a fever. Excuse me. I got a fever and I felt like I was coming down with the flu, but it just lasted a few hours
Oh,
and then I was fine. So, um, so anyway, so now you know somebody that's had it and survived.
absolutely. But I am afraid of getting the vaccine because they say the younger adults are getting vaccine and getting clotted, like clots in the body. I don't know
Yeah,
whether it's
I
a
did see that.
rumor
I
or
saw that
something.
on the news. I think it's just the one kind. Here in the States, it's the one produced by Johnson and Johnson that's got the blood clots
Mm-hmm.
associated with it. The other two, I got Pfizer
Mm-hmm.
and my husband got Moderna. Those are the producers. And
Right, right,
those, to
right.
my knowledge, haven't had any blood clots. But I don't know what's available in other countries.
No, we have this Covaxin and there's another one. I don't know,
Mm.
Covishield. So I am you like I'm prone to these things, side effects and everything. I get side effects from normal medicines as well. So I get afraid of all these things.
So you're sensitive to patients just in general.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm. That would make me nervous too. If I was already sensitive, that would make me a little bit nervous.
Yeah, that is the reason actually. Otherwise, it's not a issue. I think I
Mm-hmm.
can take it. But the thing is the fear of death. Actually, all that's all.
Okay, looks like we have some people coming in. Hello, M.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. Hi, Jeanette. I saw, Jeanette, that you just signed up just a few minutes ago, I believe.
Well, actually, I signed up before and didn't get a confirmation, so you may have me on the list twice.
Okay.
But
well,
better twice than not at all. And I
right.
found a piece that I bought like 5 years ago, so I'm waiting to figure out what to do with it.
Do you have a picture? Can I see a picture of what it's supposed to look like?
Yes. Can you see it?
I can't. Oh, I love that. Okay, that looks pretty straightforward. I don't see anything on there that makes me think you couldn't do it with a lesson that we're going to today. Hi, Diane. Hello, Arwen. Hello. I see somebody with a hand. What I don't know, Jeanette, is without looking at the pattern instructions, is whether it's got any back stitching or not. So I did get approval to do. No.
And the part I tell you what I really need is like, how do you find the middle?
Yeah. Okay. You will be a confident beginner when we get done.
All right.
Yeah, I'm sure that I'm going to help you accomplish that today. So I feel good about that. And then the backstitch, I did get approval this week to go ahead and start prepping the intermediate counted cross. Hi, Phyllis. It's a Sunday. You can be with me for the whole
class. No, I can't.
No.
Huh?
Do you work on Sundays too?
No, I'm going to go work on my other house.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I tried.
I know.
So in the intermediate class, I'll cover some of those more advanced skills, but that, Jeanette, looks pretty straightforward. So
that always makes me feel terrible when I can't do it.
I know, it's frustrating, right? So as you're joining me today, I want to say Happy Mother's Day. If you happen to be a mother, or you happen to be someone who's been an influence in a motherhood capacity over others, I am curious to know what brings you to join me today on Mother's Day. Are you bored silly? Are you in quarantine? Are you just have some time on your hands? Tell me a little bit about why you're joining me today.
Well, my
Don't all talk at once.
out of town and I'm lonesome.
Yep. Yep. My
It's
husband
snowing
said,
here.
who's going to join you on Mother's Day? It's snowing. Where are you, Phyllis?
Ohio.
Oh, I'm in Michigan. It's 51 degrees here. Wow. Hello, Christine. Thanks for joining us. Anyway, my husband,
Hi.
who's going to join you on Mother's Day? And I said, Dave, there are lots of people on Mother's Day that don't have anything to do. I think I'll have some people, and I'm glad to be here with you all. So that's great. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen so that we can get started and get through everything that we want to get through today. So I'm hoping that you're here to join me for Introduction to Counted Cross Stitch. That's what I plan to be covering today, and I'd like to welcome you to Get Set Up's class. And I will be your host. My name is Sarah. I live in Everett, Michigan, and that's where I am today. I did move. Normally I cast from my living room, but I have company today. So I'm hiding out in my craft room, and I put a screen in the background. It's the first time I've taught with a screen, but I didn't want you to see my mess. I have spent 22 years in education, and I retired from my elementary position last summer. During the course of my career, I spent 2 years with Michigan State University helping schools who were struggling academically, and that was definitely a highlight of my career. I live by quotes, and one of my favorites is this one: people do the best they can with what they know, and when they know better, they do better. And what that means to me is, as long as I'm alive, I will be learning new things, new skills, new knowledge, new wisdom. And when I found Get Set Up, I was so excited because I realized they had this very same philosophy. And so it's been a great partnership so far. I'm having an awful lot of fun teaching subjects that I love to people that are interested, which is very different sometimes from teaching elementary children who are not quite sure why they're there. So it has been a little bit of fun from that perspective. One of the things that I love about Get Set Up is we learn from one another. So you'll learn things from me, but I'm already learning every class. It seems like I learn something new from someone on board. And I think that that's a wonderful thing. I can cameras on. That helps me if I can read facial expressions. So for example, I was teaching crocheting the other day, and a gal was really frowning at something that I was teaching, and I was able to pause and say, I can see that you're puzzled. How can I help you get through this? And so I love it when I can see your faces, but if you don't want to, that's okay. I understand. If you get done and you say, oh, what did she say about that kind of stitch? Know that you can always request a recording after the class is over by emailing help@getsetup.io, and you would just say, I'd like Sarah's class from today on counted cross stitch, and they'll send you it and you can watch the recording. One of the nice things about that is you can queue it up to a specific spot and not have to watch the whole thing. I see that we're live streaming today, and if you're here by live stream, I'd like to welcome you. I'm glad you're with us. If you ever decide, though, that you want to be interactive with us and have a conversation with me, I'd love to have you register for our classes through the website so that you can fully participate in the classes. Get Set Up, nor I am paid to promote specific products, but especially in the craft world, I have my favorites and I mention them. I just want you to know I'm not endorsed to promote anything on my Get Set Up classes. Feel free to ask questions by unmuting yourself or typing a question in the chat. I do have Joe on board with me today as a technical and teacher's assistant. He helps me monitor the chat. And if you have questions with your technology, Joe can help you if you ask him a question in the chat. Joe, would you like to introduce yourself?
Can you hear me?
Want to say hi, Joe?
Yeah, hi everyone. I hope you can see the chat box. Let me know in the chat box if you face any technical errors or anything I can help you out with.
All right. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. Jeanette, are you from Michigan?
Unmute. Yes, I am. Class of 72, Michigan State, by the way.
So oddly enough, Jeanette, just a little tidbit is my husband is a graduate of U of M.
Ooh.
And I know, right? And I worked for 2 years getting a paycheck from Michigan State University. And know anything about Michigan, U of M's colors are gold and blue and Michigan State is green and white. And so when he would give me a hard time, I would just say, hey, remember this page, gives us green and white dollars to spend. So that was kind of fun. All right, the agenda for today. We're going to be covering what counted cross stitch is, the supplies that you might need to complete a project, the steps to completing a counted cross stitch project, and some resources where you can find kits or materials to make your own project. Is there anybody that would like to share what they were hoping to learn today? I've already heard from Jeanette a little bit. She's got a project in hand that she's hoping to work on. Does anybody else have any specific about stitch they're hoping to learn that you'd like to share?
Well, I've never done cross stitch and I've been wanting to learn it for a long time.
Okay, and is that Christine? Is that you speaking?
Yes, sorry, it's Christine.
Okay, no, it's okay. It pops up that it's you speaking. I'm just not always 100% positive. So I just wanted to check. Christina, I hope that you feel confident when we get done that you can at least take a stab at it. Anyone else? I always like to get a perspective on who my audience is. So if you're an expert in counted cross stitch, you can either show me with your fingers or you can type a number in the chat box. If you are an expert and you could teach the next class, show me a 5. If you have some experience with counted cross stitch, but you're looking for more, show me 3. And if you have no experience and you're ready to learn, show me 1. So I'm seeing a 1. Go ahead and type your answers in the chat box, so that I can kind of get a feel for the level of people in the class. That helps me customize it a little bit as I go, and I like that. I'm seeing lots of 1s. Okay. So what is counted cross stitch exactly? It is considered a form of embroidery.
Excuse me, Sarah. Sorry to interrupt. Actually, I got a message in the chat box from Janet. It was
Yes.
actually she's not able to hear you properly. She says that the voice is getting breaked in between your sound.
So is anyone else having any trouble with hearing me? I am using my Get Set Up microphone, so there should not be any issues. So that makes me think, I'm not sure, Joe, if you said it was Phyllis. I wonder if it's a problem on Phyllis's end.
Janet.
It must be a problem
Janet.
on my end. I'm getting some breaks.
Yeah,
Okay.
she has to stay muted. If she stays muted, that might help.
Oh, mute yourself, Jeanette. Try that.
Yeah, I was getting breaks also before.
Okay, and once you muted yourself, did that stop, Christine?
Well, now I haven't been hearing the breaks from you in a while.
So now I'm struggling here. Oh, I hope this works out okay. We're going to give this a try. Let's keep going. And if you need me to repeat anything, let me know. Let's try to do it that way. Okay, so cross stitch is a form of embroidery. It uses mainly cross or X-shaped stitches, although there are some other stitches like back stitch and front knot. So I'm slowing my speech down a little bit. Does that help? Anybody notice a difference
Sarah?
if I slow my speech down just a little tiny bit?
Sarah,
Yeah.
The difference I saw,
Sandra,
you
yeah.
just froze periodically. You froze periodically. So is your mic too close to the, or it might be,
No, I wonder,
might be your Wi-Fi.
I'm going to put this up closer and see if that makes any difference. All right, so here is an example of a counted cross-stitch project that I completed. You can see down here stitches with my initials and the year. I completed this in 1982, and I took this picture of it about a month ago. So you can see that even after nearly 40 years, it still looks as good as the day it was made. And part of that is care, but part of it is also using the right quality of materials when you get started. So we're going to talk about two ways to choose your project. You can either choose the pattern and buy the appropriate supplies, or you can choose a prepackaged kit. So these are the supplies that you would need to complete a project. And this is the one that we're going to be looking at yet today. And see, I guess I have to hold it because of this background. I have to hold it about right here before you can see it. So this is it's a heart. It's just a simple heart. It's in 4 colors. And it's a great beginner's project because it's enough to get us started without being overwhelming. So you need your pattern. You need your fabric. We'll talk about the fabric in detail in a minute. You'll need a cross stitch and a sewing needle because it has a blunt tip on it. And if you buy a kit, it's probably in your kit. But if you run your finger across the tip of that needle, it won't hurt your finger like a sharp sewing needle will. And you need that blunt tip so it doesn't get caught in the counted cross stitch fabric as you're trying to cross stitch. You're going to want to use some type of floss. My favorite brand is DMC. If you have a bigger project, so this is a very small project. Mine is about 3 inches by 3 inches, so I did not use any hoop at all. But if you do a bigger project, you're going to want an embroidery hoop. You're going to want some type of tape for taping the edges. We'll talk about that. You'll need scissors, and then optionally, you may want to use a magnifying glass. And as I've gotten older, I have found that I cannot complete a counted cross stitch project without a magnifying glass. I do have one that sits on a stand actually and arches over my chair so that I don't have to hold it. And it's also got a light on it. It's a company called OTT, O-T-T. I love that. So I would recommend for any handwork, really, if your eyes are struggling, pick up one of those. And there's other companies that make it too. The brand I have just happens to be OTT. That has really helped me as my eyes have gotten more challenging as I age, let's say. All right, questions so far? Is the microphone close to my mouth making any difference?
Is this similar to needlepoint, Sarah? Because
Okay,
I used
I'm
to
gonna-
do needlepoint.
Yeah, needlepoint, I think you'll find it really easy to adapt. Needlepoint, correct me if I'm wrong, because I've only done a little teeny tiny bit of needlepoint, but all of the stitches go one direction in needlepoint, is that right?
Mhm.
Yes. Well, the
Yes.
ones that I've done, they
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, and so in cross stitch, you're going to learn how to come back over to make the X. But I would say if you can do needlepoint, you'll pick this up very quickly. So
Okay,
here's some
great.
pictures. Great, yeah. Some pictures of supplies. When you store and you buy your floss, it comes like this, and this is called a skein of floss, just like a skein of yarn. And it's usually in a display case of some sort. Sometimes drawers, sometimes it'll be hanging on a rack, sometimes it'll be in open cases. It usually done numerically from lowest number to highest number, and your pattern usually tells you the colors that you need. So on this spot up here, this wrap on the skein, it's the branding with this up here. But if you go down here, the color number is right here on the side of the skein. So that's how you find the colors that you need if you want to follow what the pattern's telling you to do. And then I bring these home from the store and I put them on these cardboard bobbins. And I put them in these boxes. And I bought 3 of these boxes back about the same time I did that counted cross stitch in 1982. And I am still using these boxes nearly 40 years later. And I looked at the Walmarts. I saw them at Walmart. What I didn't see in the ones at Walmart is it used to have the DMC color chart in it. You can kind of see that under here. And I could literally, you know, circle the colors that I had or highlight the colors that I had in the box, which was a real nice organizational skill. But what I do is I take that cardboard bobbin, I write the number on the top of the bobbin, and I put it in my case numerically. And this has been a great system for me. This is an example of an embroidered hoop that I have. There's several different kinds. This would be my least favorite. My most favorite is the wooden hoop with the little screw on the side to tighten things down. And that keeps your fabric taut. And it actually, if you have it real nice and taut, it actually opens the holes up just a little tiny bit, making it more easy to see. This is some examples of different Aida cloth that I had in my own personal stash. You can see that it comes in various different colors, so you can change the color up if you want to. It even comes in black and navy blue if you want to do a lighter colored design on dark fabric. And then over here, this is called a needle art peel and stick mounting board. And it's like a piece of real heavy, solid cardstock that's sticky on one side. You peel the paper off and then you can mount your finished project on it. I do this when I'm going to frame it. So if it's going to end up in a frame, and I've got an example in the end of one that I've completed that I actually use this exact piece of mounting board on. And then it keeps it mounted firmly for the project, hopefully. And up here is an example of the counted cross stitch needles. Any questions on supplies or how to figure out how to recognize the supplies?
Sarah?
Yes.
When I bought the kit, I've never done it before, but when I bought the kit, it came with these things and it came with the mat to do it on.
Yep.
I didn't know it was such a big project.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's huge.
And yeah, so I'm going to have to do a smaller
Sandra, that's
project.
huge.
Not what I thought.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So I'm just going to
my.
follow. So I'll learn how to do the stitch. I'll use this to learn how to do the stitch and everything because it came with the needle. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, oftentimes, I'll show you, I'm sorry, this background's making it a little bit wiggly, but I do have a couple of prepackaged kits, and I'll try to, I see that I'm going to turn my background off. Does anybody mind my
Yeah, that's what it is. It's the background interfering with the voice.
crap. Oh, I don't think I can turn myself off from this view. I'd have to stop sharing. I'll show. How about if I show you at the end when I stop sharing? If you remind me, I'll show you the prepackaged projects because it's got some great stuff in it that keeps you from having to buy anything additional other than maybe some scissors if you don't have them. So I want to talk today about the pattern and how to read the pattern, because this isn't a part. It was the pattern that you see on the screen right here. I downloaded it. It was a free pattern, and I put the resource for it at the end. And when you get your email from me, you'll have the link so that if you want to download this and try it as your beginner project, you may. So pretty much every pattern that I've ever seen has these elements, and this is what you need to know. So on the far left over here, what you've got is you've got your pattern in the center of the page, and on the sides, you've got numbers. As numbers are telling you is how to find the center of your fabric. And somebody, I think it was Jeanette, already told me that she was hoping to be able to figure out how to find the center. So both on the vertical and the horizontal part of the pattern, there's a little arrow. And the arrow is saying, this is the center. This is the center horizontal, and this is the center vertical line. And so what I do is I take my pattern and I make a copy of it. I always keep my original in case I ever want to do it again, but I take my copy. I'm so sorry this is not showing up very well. Joe, is there anything I can do to make what I have in my hands show up without unsharing?
It's the background. It's being absorbed by the background.
I see that. So what I wanted you to see that I can't show, hold on. I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna stop sharing for a minute. Hold on. I just want you to be able to see this. I'm gonna take that background off. Hold on. So you're just gonna have to put up with my craft room in the back.
Mine is
Okay,
the
now I'm
same
gonna-
way.
Okay, good. Usually I cast from my living room, and I have company today, so I'm not casting from the living room, so I'm in my craft room. All right, now I think it's going to be better. So this is what I do to my pattern. I take those vertical arrows and I take a black marker and I draw a line right down the center vertical and across the center horizontally, because that becomes my reference point. Now in this, it's probably not, this tiny little pattern, it's probably not a big deal, but if you got one like Sandra was holding up, that could be a make it or break it. And so then, some other things that the pattern tells you is it tells you about that DMC thread. So it shows a picture of your color in two ways. It'll usually show you, unless you have a black and white pattern, it'll show you a color and it'll show you an icon. And it'll show you a color and an icon, a color and an icon. And I know if I wanted to go to the store with this pattern, I could go into the DMC skeins of thread and I could pick out the 3326 and have the exact same color that they're recommending. I could pick out the 554 and have the exact purple, the 955 green and the 572 and have the exact olive. Now let's just say I didn't like these colors and I wanted to do my own thing, which is really what I did for this pattern. And what I would do is I would cross this out on my pattern. I'd cross this 3326 out and I would write in the new number that I'm using in its place. Again, I wouldn't have to do this with 4 colors, but let's say I had 20. Now I better do that or I'm going to lose track of what color I was using for what symbol. Any questions on reading the pattern itself? Okay, we're going to talk about the fabric for a little bit because the fabric is different. Most generally, on average, it's called Aida cloth. So if you went into a Joann's Fabrics, for example, you might say to them, where is the Aida cloth? And they're going to take you to the counter cross stitch aisle. Aida cloth, what makes Aida cloth is what you see over here, and that's the weave. So you can see that it looks like check boxes with 4 corners. And for the most part, unless you're doing special stitches, you're only going to be using those 4 corners, and now it gives you a consistent look when you're all done. Now, and I showed you here, look at the variety of colors that you can get the Aida cloth in. Now, here's some other things you need to know about it. It has different counts. So if it's 11 count, what that's telling you is that if you took a ruler and you put it down and you looked at 1 inch, the biggest one is going to have only 11 squares in a square inch across, and only 11 squares in an inch. If you get 14 count, Now it's going to have 14 squares in the same square inch. And if you go to 18 count, you're going to have 18 squares, so that you can see that if you have difficulty with your eyes, you may want to go to the 11 count. If you have trouble with your eyes and you've never done counted cross stitch before, you may want to start on 11 count just to get some practice on something that's a little bit bigger. So, and it goes up. I mean, I think the tiniest I've worked on is either 20 count. I wouldn't even probably attempt that now. So that's Aida cloth. Now there are other fabrics that you can use. For example, I've done it before on gingham, 1/4 inch gingham. I made a baby blanket quilt, a baby quilt, and I counted cross stitched first on the gingham using the gingham squares. You can use a pull away cloth where you can actually put the pull away, you stitch it onto like a sweatshirt. You do your counted cross stitch pattern, and the pull away called waist cloth leaves the pattern behind. So that's kind of a fun one to work with. So there are other options, but the most common one, if you were going to go in and purchase it, would be called Aida cloth. And that's what you find in most of the prepackaged kits as well. So now what do you do once you open that package up? What do you do with the fabric? So if you're cutting it, you want to make sure that you're cutting it at least an inch wider on every side than the field of the design. Or you need to determine what is your finished product to be. So recently I did one, you'll see it at the end. My son said, Mom, I want this Godzilla thing for my bathroom. He's 30 years old, by the way. I want this Godzilla counted cross stitch thing for my bathroom. And so I made it for him. I knew I was going to frame it 8 by 10 when I got done. And I actually cut it, my fabric, I actually cut like 11 by 12, or I did it bigger so that I could trim it down to 8 by 10 when I got done. And I did that on purpose because sometimes the edges get a little ratty. So cut it at least an inch bigger, decide on what your finished project is going to be, and cut accordingly. If it's prepackaged, it's probably already the right size and you won't have to trim it at all. Okay, this is how you prep your fabric, and this is how you mark your center. So what I do is I take my piece of fabric and I use, this is painter's masking tape. I have used Scotch tape before. What I don't like about the Scotch tape is it tends to fall off before I'm done with the project. I do like the painter's tape a lot. And I just folded it over that coverage. And that's because this fabric frays. The weave is easy to fray. And so what you're doing is you're stopping the fraying while you're working on the project. This comes off when you're all done. You're going to peel it right off. But you put it on all 4 sides. And then you need to find your vertical and your horizontal centers. And I do this by folding it in half along one line of the dots. And I do it vertically, and I put this running stitch in, and then I do it horizontally, and I put this running stitch in. Now the ones I always just do it with common household sewing thread, non-embroidery thread. I use 1 strand, and I always choose a color that's not in my finished project. And I do that on purpose so that I can easily see it to pull it out. Now, someone asked me when I was teaching, do you ever get it stuck in there and you can't get it out? Sometimes it seems like it's stuck, but I just work it a little bit with the needle, and eventually, I've always eventually gotten every bit of it out. So once I figured out where my center is, I make a little knot with the thread up at the top, and I do these long running stitches and that's not counted. I just go over, I don't know, somewhere between 4 and 8. I go over and under, and you can see they're different lengths. But what I do try to do is make sure I've got one good one across my center point so that I have a cross in the middle when I get done. That helps me know exactly that this is my exact center hole. So I do, and then when I get down here, I tie it off, and then I come back in and I start, I tie it here, I go across and I tie it off there. And that becomes the best marking spot I've got for knowing where I am in my project. Are there any questions on prepping your fabric before you get started? This is to remind me to tell you that if this had been a bigger project, my next step would be it so that my center is in the center of the hoop. But because this is so tiny, I'm not actually hooping this project. This is showing you that my skein's up close, and this is showing you how I traded out my threads. So I started using the colors they recommended. You can see they match. I started using those colors and it just didn't show up clear enough for the demonstration. So I swapped all 4 out for deeper hues. And the one thing that I didn't do on here that I should have was shown you the way that I cross it out and write the numbers in. I'm not going to get confused, but if this had been a bigger project, I certainly would have wanted to do that. So I took my skeins, put them on the bobbins, have my bobbins numbered, and then I can pull what it requires on the pattern to make the product. Okay, we're going to talk about how to make the first stitches. And so you need to, I like to choose stitches that are in the center of the design. So in this case, on the pattern that I'm working on today, I could have gone with green or I could have gone with purple. I went with the green because it was close. The first stitch of the green to the center. So I decided to start with green. You cut your floss approximately 12 to 18 inches long. Any longer than that, and it starts to fray before you get done using it. And any shorter than that, and you're changing your thread too often. So I like that 12 to 18 inch long piece. When you cut it, what you're going to find is that there's 6 strands actually wound together. And that's what I'm showing you here. There's actually 6 individual threads making up one strand of DMC floss. Depends on your squares, that will determine how many you're going to peel off. So if you're working on 14 count, rule of thumb is going to be 2 strands. If you're working on 11 count, the bigger ones that I was talking about earlier, you're probably going to work with 3 strands. And if it's small, like 18 count and above, it may be only 1 strand, but your pattern usually tells you, and or you could find a reference chart online. So for Ada, the Ada 14, which is what I did for this project, I peeled off 2. And that's showing you that I peeled off 2, pulled that to the right, or I just pulled it apart. And then I'm going to thread my needle. Any questions on the thread? Okay, so what I'm going to show you first is I'm going to show you just in general, and then I'm going to show you project specific. So this is like, think of this as big picture counted cross stitch, how to do a basic stitch. So this is not showing you like I've picked my center and I'm counting yet. This is just how is a stitch made. And what's important is not as much how you do it, is that you do it consistently, that you do it the same way every time. So you might be thinking, well, I want to do each X individually. That would just make total sense to me. That actually gives you a less consistent look when you're all done. So what you do, what I do is I always come up, if this is the square that I'm putting my stitch in, I always come up in the lower left-hand corner, pull my thread all the way through the fabric, and then go down in the upper right-hand corner. And if I was doing 5 in a row, I would come up in this corner in the lower left, I would go down in the upper right, I would go down again in the lower left, I would come up through in the lower left, down in the upper right, and I would repeat that 5 times until I have all of my slants to the right before I ever return. So now let me show you the return row, same thing. So I put in my first stitch, coming up here, going down here. To complete that stitch, I would come up in the lower right, come up through that lower right hole and back down in the upper left. You said to me, but I want to up in this corner, and really what matters is that you do it consistently, however you do it. And then if I was coming back, I would come back up here, down here, up here, down here, up here, down here. And that's how I would complete that whole row of 5. Any questions on the stitches how to make the X. Okay, so now we're going to put in this project. And what I've got is I've got kind of a far away view of my pattern here. I've got a close up over here, and I've got my prepped fabric right here. Remember I said I'm going to start with the green. I could have started with the purple, but that's quite a ways away from that center point where this was just straight down the row. That was why I chose the green. But I want you to know that another rule of thumb with counted cross stitch is if you're working on white fabric, you would start with your lightest colors and work towards your darkest colors. And if you were working on dark fabric, you would start with your darkest colors or toward your light. And that's because sometimes when you carry your thread behind your work, when you're moving from one spot to another, the thread can actually show up. So if you do it in that order, it's better. So if this was a big project and I was really worried about that, I probably would still start in the center with whatever's in the center and make a center piece and count out from there, the light to dark rule. I just like the security of putting my center stitches in first. So that I made on my pattern, I don't normally do that. I just did it so that you could visually see what I'm telling you out loud. So this is the center of the pattern. We know that because of the arrow over here and the arrow up here, and I drew my lines in. And then over here, you've got a close-up of the same thing. So this hole right here is the center. Now, if you were folding it and you said, Sarah, what if I'm one hole off? What if I got my whole row here, one stitch, but you want it as close to the center as you can get it. And then what I do is, remember I told you, I start in the lower left-hand corner. So I want to know where this hole is right here on this fabric. And so to start here, what I'm going to do is I'm on the pattern. I'm going to go down 1 and I'm going to go back 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that's where I'm going to start. This row, however, has 15 stitches in it. So you're going to do your right slant 15 times, and then you're going to go back doing your left slant 15 times. So what I did was I went down 1 and back 8 to get to this point. So let's see if I did it right. So here's my center. I'm going to go down 1 and I'm going to back up 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to come up here and down here. Any questions on first? All right, so once I've got that first stitch in, I'm going to do all of my 15 stitches to the right, my right slant for all of those green X's. And now you're saying to me, but what about the back, Sarah? I didn't see you put a knot in that thread and you didn't mention anything about a knot. That's because in counted cross stitch, there's no knots on the back of your work. So this is another little tricky piece about it. We call it carrying or catching your thread on the back. And what I'm doing is I'm leaving a tail. So when I pull that first stitch up, I'm leaving a tail behind my work that's about 1 inch long, maybe 1.5 inches, and I'm holding it down with my finger. And as I do that first row of stitches, I'm catching that thread behind my first row of stitches as I go so that it lays flat against the fabric. And the reason we do that is if I put knot here and a knot here and a knot here and a knot here, and just think what it would be like if I was changing colors every 3 or 4 X's, it would be so bumpy, it would never lay flat on my board for framing. And so this lay, yes.
So it's almost like crocheting it into the other line so it can lay flat. Yeah, okay.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Yes, that's a great connection. So what I do when I get started with my very first row, hold it behind. But then every time after that, like when I got to the end, I took my needle and I ran it under the stitches like you would do in crocheting when you're weaving your ends in, and then I trimmed it off. So how far? Rule of thumb is 5 stitches or more. Okay, so I probably did 7, but rule of thumb is don't do it for less than 5 because it's not secure. So I started out catching it on the back. This is the back side, remember? So we're looking at the opposite end of the row. I caught it under these stitches to begin with. I wound it under these stitches when I got done. Now, when I started this green down here, I could have taken my needle and I could have run it through here, but I wanted you to be able to see clean colors on the back, so I chose not to do this. The other thing is heard somebody once say that your back should be almost as attractive as your front. Haven't mastered that yet, but I got pretty close on this one. So yeah, right. So any questions on how you do the thread bind? We're going to talk about carrying the stitches a little bit. You know, when you go behind and go to a new spot, we'll talk about that in a minute. But that's what's going on here. This is demonstrating how to get started without tying a knot. Questions or comments? So now this is just simply showing you, here's my 15 to the right, and then I came up through that lower right-hand corner, and I started moving my just to the left until I got to the end of the row. When I got to the row, I should go down one square and over one square to do my second row with 13 stitches in it. So I'm starting my second row right there. So this allows me to tell you a couple different things. I now have options for how I count, because I could always count from the center if I wanted to. I could say, oh, I always count from this vertical line, or I could say I'm going to count from the work I've already got done. That's why this is called counted cross stitch, is because you're counting. The one from your work is if you've gotten off a square somewhere. So every once in a while, I double check against both my center lines and my work. I have ripped. I have had to tear stitches out, and it's heartbreaking because this is not a quick craft. And so, you know, you're better off to make sure that you're putting them in the right places than to push ahead and then have to tear it out later on. This is where I'm taking my needle in the end of my green thread. You have to have enough thread on there to be able to, you know, get your needle out far and to get it under there. So don't shortchange yourself when you're getting ready to change your thread. And then this is showing you I moved on to the green section, did all of my stitches to the right, then all to the left. Finish that section off. Now, this last bottom row had 3 stitches in it. I didn't feel good about going under only 3 stitches. So when I put my needle under for that, I put it 1 row up to make sure I had my thread running under at least 5 stitches. And this is showing you moving to that purple section. And what I would have done for that is I would have started in this corner, and I would have said, I'm going to start my purple section right here. So how do I need to do that? Well, I'm going to go from this corner. I'm going to put my needle in on top from this corner, and I'm going to count there, and I'm going to mark here. So I count up 1, 2, 3, and back to the left 1. So I on the front where I could see it, I would have taken my needle and I would have counted this 1, 2, 3, back 1 to start that section. Sometimes when I start a section, I take my needle and I just fuss with that hole a little bit, make it a little tiny bit bigger, just so I can see it when I'm starting my thread on the back, and it's always stretched back in when I'm done. So that shows you that purple section complete. And now I want to talk a minute about this pink section. That's an example of where we're talking about, what do I do? Do I do this whole pink section, and then do I move to this whole pink section? And there's some guiding rules with this. Now, because this was such a small project, I really could, it would have probably been 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. So I could have done this and moved over here, and then I could have done this, but I wanted to show you about carrying the thread. So I carried it for this project. So what I did was I counted 4 to the right up here. So I did my 4 to the right. I carried my thread up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I skipped 5 squares coming up right here, doing these 4 to the right. Then I came up here, did my 4 to the left, carried my thread underneath to this spot, and then did these 4, moved back 1 and down 1 to start this row. I carried it across these 3. You can see that right here. And then in that last row, I carried it across the 1. And you can see from the front of my work that you can't see the pink stitches that I carried. Picture, you'll see where I carried black under white too far, and because I was feeling lazy. And I'm kind of sorry at this point that I did it, because I can actually see it even though it's been framed. But that's how you carry your thread underneath. What you want to make sure is you're not yanking it tight when you do that. You want it to, your thread length to equal your fabric length. When you do that, rule of thumb is not to carry it more than 1 inch. That's rule of thumb. Any questions on that? So when I got done, I pulled off the masking tape, and here's an example of what I was talking about, the fabric fraying. That's why we tape it, because this fabric frays so easily. So I pulled my tape off, I snipped, I put my scissors in and I snipped real close to that knot, and I just started pulling that thread out. If it gets caught in here, I stick my needle in and fuss with it a little bit and get it loose. I might cut it, I might trim it, I do whatever you can use tweezers if you're having a hard time, but you just pull that out at the end. You fuss with your needle and little out, it all comes out. I've always had it able to get everything out. And then it looks like a finished project. So you can see here, some of these holes look a little bit bigger. Over time, you can't, on my finished one, you can't even see those anymore, because the thread tends to pull back in where it's supposed to be. This is a good close-up. You can really see the squares emphasized in here that, show you that it's pretty easy to see where your stitches go. Questions on the finished project? So these are some tips and tricks. Make sure to cut your thread 18 inches or less so that it doesn't fray. It actually can wear the color out of it too. It's terrible. Just don't do it. Carry your thread behind your work 1 inch or less. Remember, dark behind white can show, and vice versa. If your thread starts to feel twisted, so you're doing a long row and you feel like it's all twisted and it's going to knot, take your work face down. So this is the front of my work, face down like this, horizontally. Dangle your thread with your needle on it, and it will just spin and untwist, and that will keep you from getting knots in the work. That's a really useful tip. And just know that tension is important. You don't want to pull too hard, nor do you lose more stitches to be even with your fabric. You don't want it to be pulling as you're doing it. Here's a quick video of how to get a knot out. So this is the most frequent knot I see when I'm cross stitching. And it used to be, I would try to pull it out and it would get tighter. And I would give up. I would want to just quit because I was cutting off my yarn frequently. And so I'm going to show you this video, and I'm going to check my chat box while I'm showing you this video. Oh, let me give you a voice. Through the holes of the cloth. So to get that out, I'm going to put my needle inside the loop, and I'm going to softly tug until it's as tight as my needle. And then once it gets as tight as my needle, without over tugging, I'm just going to take my knot right out of there. Any questions on getting out the knot? That really is a helpful trick, and it works, I would say, over 90% of the time. I see someone's asking about getting a copy of the class. I can't send you a copy. You do have to, unfortunately, you do have to email getsetup@.io and ask them for a copy of Sarah's Intro to Counter Cross Stitch class from today, and they'll send a copy right to your email. Here's the Godzilla one that I was talking about. this is my son's bathroom. He's got it proudly framed and sitting on his shelves that he bathroom. If you look closely, I decided I was going to run my thread behind over to this helicopter, and I think it was this color gray right here, which was probably this color gray over here. I can see it. Maybe you can't, but I can, and it drives me crazy. I was really wishing I'd not been lazy, and then I cut it off over here and started it fresh over here. This was a nice one because it was 100% X's. There's no back stitching. There's no special stitch in this, but it ended up in an 8x10 project. So it's in the fact that it had a lot of color changes in it, anybody could probably do this project as a beginner project. What else? What we've talked about what count and cross stitches. We've learned what supplies you needed. Oh, I promised you I'd show you some sample project kits. So these are some project kits that I've bought. This one is a pineapple. Sorry about the shine from my window. It's a pineapple. This one is it comes with the hoop already in it. It's a little bit more expensive to buy that way. So if you don't need a hoop, it's probably a waste of money, but it is nice that it came with everything in it for a beginner project. It also has no special stitches in it. This was a little tiny one I picked up at Hobby Lobby for $1.99. Was it, I can't remember if it was Jeanette or Sandra, that was Sandra, I think it might have been, that was holding up that great big huge project. I think it was Sandra. You know, this for $2 might be the way you want to get started. And come with everything you need to make it, including the cute little black frame that it goes in for $2. So that's a great practice one. This one I absolutely fell in love with. It has canning jars with fireflies in it. But one of the things that was attractive to me about this one is the fabric is navy blue. And again, it comes with everything in it that you need to make it. And then this is the one I think I'm going to use for my advanced class because I think it's got the elements in it that I want to teach next. This is a nursery, and now I use for my granddaughter that's due next Sunday, a week from today, because it uses some of the extra special stitches in it, and it'll be a good next step. But it comes also with everything in it that you need to complete the project. All right, what questions do you have? We've got 5 minutes. And if not, I'll just, go ahead, Jeanette. What you got?
If you mess up and you've kind of tangled your thread, just remember what the colors are and go buy some more. Is that the point?
Yes. So a couple things. One is if you didn't like the colors that came with it, you could totally switch them out, right? You could, like, let's say it was all blues and you wanted to do it all reds. You could do that by going to the store and picking out the different colors, even if it was a prepackaged project. The other thing is yes, if you ever ran out, usually in a lot, I don't know that I've ever used a whole skein in one project. Maybe I have, but usually there's more than enough in one skein. That great big one that Sandra held up that looked like it was probably going to be 16 by 20, that one probably uses more than one skein of any given color. I did buy, one year I made counted cross stitch stocking ornaments for each one of my kids. I did them as stocking stuffers. I used multiple skeins in that because it was actually multiple stockings in the thing. So yes, if I wanted to go back and match it, I would want to make sure I had enough thread to begin with. That's a great question. Here's some other classes that are coming. My next classes, I am not doing that handcrafted social hour anymore, but I'm doing advanced count and cross stitch soon. And I do have more classes in development. I am working on count and cross, not count and cross stitch. I'm working on crocheting and knitting advanced classes right now. I've already got my intros launched on those. So I'd love you to join me for one of those. After we get done, I'm gonna go in and do my part, and then you're gonna get an email from me with resources in it from today's class. Scroll down in that email, you can get to the feedback button and you can give me some feedback. You can rate me, you can rate the content of the class, you can write me a note, and I read every single one. You can also tell me if you're interested in any other classes. I've been hired by Get Set Up to do a multitude of craft classes. So if you got some ideas for me, I'm always open to those. I'm glad that you're part of the Get Set Up community. We would love to have you spread the word. You can actually host an interest group. You just have to let us know. You can suggest classes like I told you, or you can also email to do that. We partner other agencies that cater to older adults, and we'd love to reach out to yours. You can let us know that in the email. And I already mentioned that you can get a copy of the recording by emailing help@getsup.io. And I'll stay on for a minute. We still got 2 minutes left. I'll stay on. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that if you wanted to see anything more close up, I can certainly help you with that. Jeanette, what do you think? Do you think you're going to be able to do the project?
Well, I'm trying right now to take out so I only get 2 strands. So if I don't tangle it up, I think I'll be good.
So Jeanette, did you cut it? Did you cut it to like 12 to 8 inches? When you're pulling.
It came longer than that, so I should cut it anyway.
Yeah, I would cut it into the smaller lengths. And then the other trick that you can do is when you're pulling it apart, let's say you've got the end that you're pulling apart up here, put that other end in your mouth like this. And just tug on it lightly as you pull, and then let go with your mouth, and it pulls right apart without knotting.
Okay, all right, cut. I got it.
Sarah?
Sandra.
Sarah,
Yeah.
first I want to just say thank you.
Yes.
Because before this class, I've had these little kits, never opened them, had no clue.
Yeah.
The next thing is the needles. You probably can't see this, but from here to here, that's how big that needle is. Are there different sizes? This is what came with the kit. I wouldn't even know how to buy a needle. Let me
just see what my package does. So, can you see that? I know I'm getting a glare because it's.
Oh yeah, I see that.
These are bigger. They're bigger. So, and they actually come in sizes. Like this one says that it's got 18 to 22 on it, and that's because the 8 cloth comes in the different sizes. So, I would say if you want something that's a little bit bigger, go ahead and take it to the store. But
yes,
that does look pretty.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Like that.
Tiny, but not terrible, not big needles.
Okay. And the last
what
thing.
You do have to make sure of, what you do need to make sure though, Sandra, is that it does have a blunt tip on it and it's not as sharp.
Yes, this is blunt. This is blunt. It is blunt.
Yeah.
The last thing, the kit came like this. Okay.
Yeah, I hate that.
I don't know how to break that up. It has a knot. Just one. Just show me one.
The big kits, that's how they come. So right where that big knot is, try to take the whole, try to keep the strands together and unknot it at that point. And then once you get it apart, then lay it, so that everything's vertical in front of you, and pull one whole strand, one whole thread out. Yeah, just like that. Now, when you pull it apart, make sure you're pulling just like that. Perfect.
Oh, so that's one strand. Okay.
But that's got 6.
This is 18 inches.
And I'm guessing.
Yeah, this is 18. This has
perfect.
What?
And
18.
6 strands within it. So you're going to peel off 2 before you start cross stitching.
But cut it. You reminded me to cut it. That's the best thing so that you don't tangle it up.
Oh my goodness! You mean this has strands in it?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I see it. Can you see that?
Yes, yeah. I can. I sure can. So
thank you, Janet.
2 of those, and you want it to be 18 inches or shorter.
Yes.
Okay. So thanks, Janet, because I would have thought this was one strand.
Nope.
Okay. Yeah, here it is.
But magnifying glass out. but we aren't gonna pull it.
Okay, now Sandra, there's my trick. So
I pulled it. I made a mistake. Show me again.
You said don't pull it until you cut it.
Okay.
Make the right length and then put the one end in your mouth. Yeah, and the opposite end, take your two pieces and kind of stretch it and pull at the same time and they'll come apart real easy.
Okay, I'll do it right now.
Okay.
And I also started, when I folded it too many times, it started rattling. So that's why I'm going to go get the tape.
Yes. Another thing, Sandra, is if you have, once you get them separated, if you don't have those little bobbins like I had, you can take,
It came with it. The holes are there.
okay,
You
good.
just put the holes and you make the bobbins. Okay. And put them how?
Perfect. Okay, great. Other
And I put them in a
questions?
hole. I put them in a hole. In the bobbin hole. You just wrap them around the bobbin hole.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Welcome. Good luck, everyone.
This was fun.
This is amazing. Good luck. I come again and tell me how it's going.
Mother's Day, everybody.
Mother's Day. Bye now.